Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks! What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / overview to share with you guys. This is the LAPG TBFK. I'm sure many of you guys are already aware of this knife. If you are not, I'm late to the game as usual. This knife is a $40 knife, 40 bucks, that boasts S35VN steel. Obviously this knife is made in China, but S35VN is not a steel that we see on an inexpensive knife. And again, before people start typing, yes, I'm aware that this is a newer version of the knife. Yes, I'm aware that test results or HRC testing has come back, and people have seen that there's a wide variety of different you know, Rockwell hardnesses that people are getting, right? It's one of those things where, you know, it is, for anybody who doesn't know, it really is S35VN, but it seems to be, you know, the way that they're getting away with it only being $40 is that they don't all seem to be heat treated correctly. Now, to add further confusion to that, it's like, well, why are you looking at it then? Because I watched Cedric and Ada's test video on this thing, and they ended up with, on the version that they had, 180 rope cuts, which is very similar to a Chris Reeve Sebenza. Does that mean the Sebenza is not heat treated properly? No, it means likely, I mean, obviously there are many, many variables. It means it's possible that some variants out there actually are heat treated close to, if not correctly. I don't know that for certain. I am not somebody who professionally tests knives. I don't do my own cut tests. I have no idea if this one is or not. But it is interesting. You can check out the HRC test results on Love Them Knives channel. And you can also check out the cut test on, I think, the older one. I can't remember if they did it on the newer one or the older one, on Cedric and Ada. So I'm going to do my general overview and review, and I'm going to keep in mind is that with this knife, which you can actually pick up on the LAPG website, you guys can go. I don't have an affiliate thing with them. You guys can go check it out if you want to. You are essentially rolling the dice, as far as I understand, on the heat treat, right? Some people are going to look at this and go, you know, for 40 bucks, I don't really care. I just want to know about the design. And for, you know, let's add some fairness in here. The vast majority of us, you know, what we use our knives for on a day-to-day basis, if it's just cutting open boxes and it's cutting open, you know, cutting through tape or paper or whatever, then yeah, you're really not going to notice a difference. It's really going to come into play when you really start using this knife. If you're breaking down a bunch of boxes, cutting into wood, cutting into thick rope, things like that, that's, you know, when the heat treat really, really matters. So consider what it is that you do with your knife, right? That being said, it is very important that any company that's going to design a knife and boast a certain type of steel, it's important that they make some effort to control the Rockwell hardness. So that being said, let's go ahead and move on here. This knife was sent by Mr. @JohnWest278 on Instagram. Please give this man a follow. It's because of people like him that I'm able to bring you guys daily knife content. It is also absolutely because of my generous patrons, so thank you so much for supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and some other benefits, there is, of course, a link down in the description. We're going to kind of try to move quickly here. Let's go ahead and get an overall measurement on this guy. Overall length coming in at 8 inches. Blade length coming in, surprisingly, a little over 3 point, that's right, at 3.5. And then your cutting edge is coming in at about 3.3. So, nice size there. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. Up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, the Rat 1 is coming in a little larger at about 8.6 inches overall. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue? The Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. It's a very good size comparison. We have a lot of similarities in handle profile, not as much in blade profile, but you know, the blade and the handle are kind of in the same place. How about up against the Spyderco Para 3? Spyderco Para 3 is coming in at 7.25 inches overall. How's the action on this guy? The action is okay. I mean, honestly, it's perfectly acceptable for a, this is a budget knife, right? It is a little bit aggressive to disengage. That area right there on that lock bar is pretty aggressive, and so is the jimping that's on that flipper tab. So while it is easy to flip, easy to manipulate, your thumb will get a little tired over time disengaging it. Let's go ahead and point out that this is the newer version of the knife. There's a couple of little tiny improvements. I think one of the biggest ones is the position of the pocket clip. It's my understanding that the original version of this knife came tip down only. You can carry your knives however you want. You don't have to listen to me. Tip up, tip down. If it's a thumb stud opener primarily, it really doesn't matter that much. On a flipper, however, if you're carrying tip down and it's backed up against the seam of your pants or the back wall of your pants, it is technically possible that you bump into something and it causes that blade to deploy like this. It's not going to catch your hand, but it might catch your leg. If it's in your pocket like this and the blade is backed up against the seam of your pants, not only is it less likely something's going to bump the flipper tab, but even if it does, that blade's not going to deploy up against the back wall of your pants, which is why I always say the pocket clip needs to be, in my opinion, set up for tip-up carry in a flipper, whether you're right or left-handed. So that is a difference there. That is, these current ones are available in this current configuration. How about carry profile? So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see there it definitely is thicker. This is contoured though, and I've always said I'll take some contouring if it helps fill out the hand a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. It's not excessively thick or anything like that. Let's go ahead and do carry profile up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, two knives that are unquestionably awkward in profile, but nobody ever seems to complain about them. You can see there it's a little longer than the Para 3, a little shorter than the PM2, including the maximum height of the blade and the flipper tab. It's actually pretty tall. In places, it is at least as tall as the PM2. It's not that big of a deal, but that's quite a flipper tab. Fortunately, they have cut out this area. You know, it's not like a continuous line back here on the spine. I would say the flipper tab is just as high as the back of the, you know, where the liner and the back of the knife, right here, is what I'm saying there. So it's not that big of a deal. It's going to bother some people. Let's go ahead and talk about the blade stock thickness here real quick. Blade stock thickness, I'm going to guess about 120 thousandths. 115 thousandths is what it's showing there, so that's kind of interesting. We are looking at, you know, and again, it has been tested. It is S35VN by the composition. The question is not whether or not it's S35VN. The knife community has already collectively discovered that it is actually S35VN by composition. It's the question of, you know, whether or not the heat treat is consistent, which apparently it isn't. On the inside here, I believe we do not have any milling on the, where is that stupid flashlight? There we go. No milling on the inside. The liners are fairly thick, and they're pretty thick G10 scales. I don't think this thing comes in insanely heavy, though. Let's find out. Weight's coming in at about 4.69 ounces. Some people are going to call that heavy, some people won't. The Ritter Hogue comes in basically the exact same thing, between 4.55 and 4.7 ounces. I challenge anybody to be able to definitively say that that will make a difference. But that being said, it is over that ounce and inch mark. It's certainly going to be thicker than some people like to carry. It's certainly going to be bigger than some people like to carry. I don't have a problem with it. It falls within that range of what I consider to be normal for me. About an 8-inch knife, anywhere between 4 and 6.5 ounces is normal. If you like to carry the Para 3 or bug out on a daily basis, this is probably going to seem too big and too heavy to you. If you as well as you know, people who wear athletic shorts or, you know, skinny jeans, things like that, it's probably not going to be a comfortable carry. If you wear regular jeans and you're used to a full-size knife, this probably isn't going to bother you. Let's go ahead and do the hardware check. We'll get out my WIA magnetic driver and WIA handy-dandy bit selector. Two items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of every video. Just pull open the store and look for knife maintenance. That pivot looks huge. Let's try a T20. I think that's going to be too big, but I just want to try it. Yeah, what am I thinking? That's way too big. Let's try the T15. T15, there we go. And maybe that's too big. I don't know. This pivot just looks really big to me. Okay, I'm just not very smart. Let's go ahead and back off to the T10. A lot of people are like, check that before the video. I kind of like to check it in the video. I mean, partially so I can tell you guys all about my wonderful tools, but also because I don't want to create a biased opinion before the video starts. So some things I leave to checking. That appears to be a T10, and then unfortunately it looks like the body screws are going to be T6, which I can now pull first try because of the labels that are now on the bits. So yeah, T6, 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 the rest of it's T6. Not a deal breaker. I always like to see at least T8 or higher, and I prefer that they're all the same size. It's never a reason not to buy the knife. It's just not something that I prefer. I like the larger bit size so that the fasteners don't strip and that the bits don't strip as easily. Okay, is that everything? I think that's about it. Guys, the D10 on this is tuned pretty well. I mean, it's snappy, it flips, right? Again, really my problem is not necessarily with the jimping up here, but man, that flipper tab down here is aggressive, and this thing is super aggressive. I mean, literally within 10 flips, my thumb is kind of tired out. And it's not like I got a wimpy thumb. I mean, my fingers have plenty of dead skin on them. You know, anybody who's like, oh, you need to have calluses, you need to have dead skin. My hands are calloused. That's nonsense. Calluses in some cases, or dead skin on your finger. Like if you've got a lot of built up dead skin on your thumb or on the pads of your hands, it actually causes pinches in weird areas. In some cases, calluses can actually make it less comfortable. So anybody who's saying that, come on, that's ridiculous. Whether you have dead skin or calluses built up on your fingers or not, this area right here is not comfortable. That's something where, you know, if you're wearing gloves, it's not going to bother you, but it's also going to be more difficult to manipulate in gloves. So, you know, there's a lot of really compelling elements of this knife, you know, and I mean, if they were going to really try with the heat treat, the price would undoubtedly go up. But if they were going to do that and fix a couple of little things, you know, that's something that I would suggest. Knock this area down. That's way too aggressive, but not the worst thing in the world. Not a lot of chamfering on the edges. They're a little angular, but they're not, you know, very aggressive. I do like the contouring on the scales, and you know, despite there being some excess thickness, it does fill out the hand nicely, and it's a nice ergonomic design. It really is. It's very easy to lock into this knife, and I really don't have any issue with the shape. You can kind of move your hand around a little bit. There aren't any areas that are like you absolutely have to hold this knife this way. And you can kind of pick and choose to your preference. There are thumb studs. The thumb studs are gigantic, and they are needlessly gigantic. And you know, you can deploy it. They just don't need to be sticking out that far. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's just, I mean, I'm not sure why the thumb studs are so gigantic. It's okay. It's not as big as the issue I have with this area down here, but they're okay. Not that big of a deal. Again, it's really hard for me to, you know, like overly criticize this knife because it's a $40 knife. Then again, they are competing with CJRB Cutlery, Bestech, and Civivi, to name a few of the best budget knife makers that are out there. So little things like that, they really do stand out, you know, in today's knife world versus, you know, if this knife, you know, became available like when the Rat 1 and 2 were king. Oh my gosh, yeah, you know, people would overlook those little things, no big deal. But yeah, it is something I feel like I need to point out. LAPG, standing for LA Police Gear. And then on the back it says China and S35VN. I have no idea who the actual OEM is for this knife. No idea at all. On the blade we have a flat that carries out about 50% the length of the blade. There is a nice looking swedge that carries out to the tip. Tip is pretty thin, but that's okay. Honestly, it does get fairly thin behind the edge. You know, this is going to be, I mean, any steel, regardless of the composition, at least for a little bit, if it's thin behind the edge, it's going to cut well. So I appreciate that they, you know, this knife does not appear to be slapped together. Honestly, the overall fit and finish is okay. It's better than, you know, what I see from M-Tech and Frost Cutlery and Tac Force and, you know, the brands like that, gas station brands. I definitely can see that this is a step up from there. And, you know, the pivot is pretty smooth. You got to take it a little bit, you got to shake it shut a little bit, but it's pretty smooth. So no question there. The lines up here, little tiny bit sharp. It's not crazy. It's catching my fingernails a little bit. The actual edge, excuse me, bumped the camera there. Appears to be well done. You can see that it is even all the way down, so that's nice. Little details like that tell me that they really cared when they were putting this thing together. They were going after an ergonomic design, and in a lot of ways, I mean, this is still a very functional object without considering whether or not the heat treat is correct. It will cut, it will deploy, it will go in and out of your pocket, it will do those basic things. So I suppose I can't really complain too much there. The G10, this is actually G10. It does really look nice, and it's fitted up against the scales pretty well. I don't have a lot of complaints here in the fit and finish department. It seems to be okay. There are a couple areas right here. You can see the G10 kind of jumps up over the scale a little bit, but it's not anything crazy. A couple of standoffs back here for, you know, it's the simple pillar construction. It's going to be very easy to just kind of run a rag in there and clean it out. Well, let's go ahead and jump back here and talk about the pocket clip. So the pocket clip is definitely a good design for a pocket clip. I think it's a design that we see everywhere. It doesn't carry completely deep. It carries about right here, and that's perfectly acceptable. It's got a little bit of a bill. It's not that big of a deal. It does come in and out of the pocket pretty easily. Honestly, I don't have, sorry, the Malibu's in the pocket. It does come in and out of the pocket pretty easily. I don't have a problem with that at all. The G10's nice and smooth on the surface, so that's fine. The pocket clip itself is just too big. I mean, let's go about right here. That bill is kind of digging into my hand a little bit, and that's definitely going to be a problem over time. So, I mean, really, the pocket clip doesn't need to be any longer than about like that. And I think, honestly, it would be a lot better. It would kind of fall right here instead of right here, and that's not optimal. But, again, that's pretty minor. Nice little non-show side pivot there. And, you know, that's about it. It's a very simple design, and they've obviously taken you know, some good elements, some good examples from some other knives. They're not necessarily copying anybody. This is a pretty straightforward, simple design. Again, little things, well, pretty big thing. This area right here and the flipper tab, oh my goodness. Flipper tab could be smaller. It could be less aggressive. That liner lock can definitely be less aggressive. Thumb studs don't need to be anywhere near that size. Couple of minor fit and finish issues. It's hard to really, you know, complain about stuff like that on a $40 knife. The blade shape and geometry are pretty darn good, and they've done a good job of keeping that thumb stud out of the cutting path. There is some shouldering actually back there, so it does wrap nicely around that stop pin, so that's nice. By the way, this knife has a little bit of blade play right now, but I've been flipping it a lot. Let's go ahead and see if we can actually crank that down and get rid of it. What were we at here? I believe we were at a T10. There's no up and down blade play though. Let's go ahead and test that again. Yeah, there's no up and down blade play at all. So let's go ahead and let's close it up. See if we can bring that back center. Ooh, that's tight. A little bit. Did it turn the other side? Let's find out. See if it's free spinning. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be. There we go. Yeah, okay, there's no blade play. Let me just give that another test here real quick and see if it changed the action at all. Action feels a little bit tighter, but it wasn't really, you know, drop shut to begin with. It's still pretty easy to manipulate, and I can probably... Yeah, it's pretty much the same, except now, no, seriously, there's no blade play. We're locking up at about 50%, and it's a little bit off-centered. You know, again, if this was back during the time where the Rat was champion, I'd be like, nah, you know, no big deal. It doesn't need to be perfectly centered. But there are companies out there making knives like Civivi, Bestech, and CJRB, where the knives, for the most part, do come completely and totally centered, and they have a little bit better action, and they lock up completely solid. This has okay action, and it does lock up solid, but it's a little bit off center. Perhaps I've got one that's just not centered, and that's, you know, maybe that's just the way that it is. I don't know. It's not rubbing. It's not that big of a deal. So, fit and finish is okay. Blade geometry is pretty good. The jimping in areas is completely and totally way too aggressive. Thumb studs are too big. Pocket clip needs to be shortened up. Still though, we are looking at a $40 knife in S35VN. The biggest problem here is that you are rolling the dice on S35VN. Some reports of Rockwell hardness on this specific knife and the S35VN came in as low as 52 or 53. It could be, I mean, seriously, S35VN at 52 or 53, it almost doesn't matter what the steel is, right? At that point, you can't say, well, it's still S35VN. Nah, it's basically nothing. I mean, it's basically butter at that point. I mean, it doesn't matter, you know, I suppose some steels that are, you know, made for knives, I don't know of a steel that's made for a knife that is optimally heat treated at 53. I think that's pretty universally low. S35VN should be heat treated between, as far as I understand, between 59 and about 62. I feel like most people really prefer it between 60 and 62. It really benefits in terms of edge retention at those at that hardness range. But at the same time, for a stainless steel, S35VN is pretty tough. You get down to 53, it's going to be tough and easy to sharpen, but it's not going to hold an edge at all. So it might as well be anything, right? So if the initial draw to this knife is, wow, it's S35VN, you're rolling the dice. In my opinion, for the most part, you're getting a $40 knife that's got okay fit and finish. It is definitely a good ergonomic profile. The blade is ground well, but the steel could be anything, right? It could be 420J, which is essentially a steel that should be used for the non-locking side liner at that point, right? I don't know, maybe liner locks are made out of 420, I don't know. A 420J is pretty soft. That's basically novelty or decoration steel. So yeah, I mean, the one that Cedric and Ada had must have been at least decently heat treated to get 180 cuts on rope, so perhaps you'll get one that is heat treated well. I mean, if you, listen, if you are able to perform your own cut test and you buy one of these, right, and you're getting between, I mean, shoot, if you're getting 160 or even 150 cuts plus at, you know, on the same rope that Cedric and Ada was using, man, I'd call that a win. Yeah, I mean, if you get one that's up there really high, then okay, you paid 40 bucks and then you got a knife that's, I guess, decently heat treated, right? But other than that, you're just rolling the dice on the steel. I'd really like to see this knife come in a little bit more expensive and have a better, more consistent heat treat and have some of those weird little issues fixed. I mean, honestly, it's like if this was a $70 knife or a $75 knife and they, you know, had the heat treat was consistently between 59 and 61, yeah, it would be so much more worth it, you know? I mean, like, I could stand some of these teeny tiny little fit and finish issues. They fix this up, they knock the flipper tab down, make it shorter, knock these thumb studs down, right? Make them smaller, make that pocket clip a little bit shorter, and heck, you know, yeah, 100%, that'd be pretty cool. This would be a very recommendable knife. But I'd rather pay more money and know that it's properly heat treated than pay $40 and roll the dice on what most people are saying is almost, it's more often than not heat treated correctly. That's the vibe that I'm getting from the information in the knife community, right? So is this a recommendable knife? Not something that I'm going to say you guys should definitely go out and buy. If you're interested in rolling the dice, feel free. The LAPG website's where you pick these up. I'm glad they changed the pocket clip. Right? It's interesting. I'd like to see what they do with this in the future and see if people, you know, who do pick these up are reporting more consistent heat treats. That would be excellent. But that's pretty much all I have to say about this. I do appreciate John West 278 for letting me take a look. That was really, really nice of you. Thanks so much. Guys, that's going to be pretty much it today. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.